What's good, YouTube? Masex back with another video, and we're going to go ahead and continue this series. Last video we looked at the class of 2010. Like I said, we're in the time machine right now. We're going to go ahead and go forward, but we're going to go 1 year in 2011. Now, I'm not going to hold y'all. I was going to look primarily at the running backs for this decade, but I looked at 2011 and I'm like, man, just like 2010, they low-key on some bullshit too. So we actually going to do a little remix with this, and we're going to actually look at the top 10 prospects for the 2011 class. This class was loaded. Honestly, I wish I had the capacity to do like the top 50 so you could really see what I mean, because there's definitely a lot of hits, but there are a lot of folds as well. Folds, aka busts. And a lot of these guys, you're going to know who they are. Unlike last class, just looking at the running backs, where I'd say maybe one or two of them you might have known. But hey, we're going to look at these guys right now. If you're new to the channel, definitely don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Definitely help support the channel. We're on the road to 2K. And as I mentioned, we're going to look at the entire 2010s decade and just take some trips down memory lane and see what happened. Now, this is definitely a little bit longer of an intro, but hey, I appreciate y'all patience, unless you skipped ahead. But then again, you didn't hear what I just said now. Anyways, let's go ahead and get to it. Top 10 high school prospects. This is according to 24/7 Sports, man. I had to get back to 24/7, man. ESPN is trash. Without further ado, let's get to it. All right, so 24/7's #1 prospect, and I remember this like it was yesterday, the generational high school prospect himself, Jadeveon Clowney, out of South Point High School in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Man, Jadeveon Clowney was one of those recruits where the conversation wasn't, will he be good? It was, how great can Jadeveon Clowney be? His hype out of high school was just insane. I mean, if you look at his high school highlight tape, at 6'5", 240 plus pounds, bro was literally playing every position, even running back. And that was some of the funniest shit ever, because he was literally running away from DBs at the high school level as a edge rusher, playing running back, receiver, linebacker, safety. He was everything. South Carolina was elated when he signed his letter of intent there. 5-star recruit, the highest recruit ever to come to South Carolina. Honestly, Jadeveon Clowney was one of the most hyped up high school football prospects of all time. And at South Carolina, he made an impact right away. Now, for me, it was a little bit underwhelming. He did have a great sophomore year. I remember that in 2012, 13 sacks, 23.5 tackled for loss. He definitely had Heisman level buzz as a sophomore. SEC freshman of the year as a true freshman. I remember his true junior year going into it. That was some of the earliest conversations about should he sit out his junior year, because he was already NFL ready in a lot of prospects' eyes. And I remember them saying, is he going to sit out? Is he going to play? Of course he played his true junior year, which was a little inconsistent, underwhelming, injuries, and he had a lot of double teams that slowed down his final season's production. But everybody knew the NFL talent was obvious. If you remember the bowl game, the hit versus Michigan became the defining college football moment. They played that on ESPN back when ESPN was actually digestible to watch. They played that probably all day, every day for 2 weeks straight from that bowl game. Overall career stats, 47 tackles for loss and 24 sacks in 3 seasons. He was the consensus #1 pick, where he went to the Houston Texans at #1. And as a Colts fan, I mean, that was terrifying, because the Texans already had J.J. Watt, who by 2014 was the most dominant player literally in the NFL. And so Andrew Luck, who it's well noted that we already had some struggles with him getting hit, which mostly was his fault, as well as the offensive line. I just was in fear for the rest of the decade that we were going to be in huge trouble with J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney coming off of the edge. I wouldn't call Jadeveon Clowney a bust. He, #1 pick. He did have multiple Pro Bowls, but just not the sack totals that most of us were expecting as the prospect that he was coming out to. But just overall, if you look at the big picture for Jadeveon Clowney, he was still one of the safest #1 prospects of the last 15 years, and he's carved out a pretty solid NFL career. He's played for teams like the Seahawks, Browns, Ravens. He does have 50 plus sacks in his career, but injuries have really, I think, helped cap his athletic ceiling and his overall NFL ceiling. He's still in the NFL today. He joined the Cowboys in hopes of adding some veteran presence as they're fighting for a playoff finish. So all in all, I wouldn't call Jadeveon Clowney a bust, but definitely his career was underwhelming. Moving on next to Cyrus Kouandjio, the number 2 overall prospect, of course a 5-star rating from DeMatha Catholic in Hyattsville, Maryland. He's 6'7", 315 pounds coming out of high school. He had an NFL-ready body out the gate, and that's why he had almost as much hype as Jadeveon Clowney. Not quite, but almost. He was supposed to be the next great Alabama left tackle. Plug right away as a true freshman and let him go out there and dominate. Now his college career overall, he was a 2-year starter for Alabama. He was the starting tackle for back-to-back national champions for 2011 and 2012 at Bama, but it was clear that he wasn't the guy that we thought he was going to be. He did benefit from an elite surrounding of talent with the offensive line, and also AJ McCarron, who was a dominant quarterback, and we all know about the running backs that he had to block for that made him look a lot better than what he actually was. He was rarely dominant individually, but in structure he was pretty solid. He had a really poor combine. The Sugar Bowl performance was pretty bad, so he dropped into the second round. He was actually still, because of the upside in his frame, was still projected to go first round up until that point. Was drafted in the second round by the Bills, saw limited action early, and 2 years later in 2016 he became the full-on starter, but ankle injuries, inconsistency, and off the field incidents was the derail of his career. Played for a few other teams, the Lions and Broncos. He was signed and released multiple times, very limited playing time, and that was all she wrote for Cyrus Kouandjio's NFL career. He had a brief stint with the XFL, the New York Guardians, and the CFL up in Canada, the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And that was pretty much it. Right now, he's into real estate investing. He's co-founder of Titan Junk Removal Incorporated, which focuses on community impact according to his LinkedIn. So he's still doing well for himself, but very underwhelming and disappointing career. A high floor prospect that never raised the ceiling. 24/7's number 3 prospect for 2011 was Yall Collins from Redemptionist High School in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Out of high school, he was 6'5", listed at 306 pounds. Yall Collins was considered one of the safest prospects in the entire 2011 class. He was the plug-and-play guy. I think ESPN actually had him ranked higher than Cyrus Kouandjio, so in the rare case, ESPN was more correct than 24/7, because this guy was a 3-year starter at LSU. Plugged him in. He played both guard and tackle. He was known for physicality and consistency, and he anchored LSU's run-heavy identity, which LSU was very run-heavy at the late 2000s, early 2010s, much different than what they are now. Now, he was projected as a day 1 pick, and he had some off-the-field issues. But in all honesty, it wasn't really fair to him. Before the 2015 draft, his stock plummeted due to police wanting to question him. He wasn't even a suspect, but there was an unaliving in his ex-girlfriend, and he was questioned for that, and that alone was enough to drop his status to an undrafted free agent, which was very unfortunate because he was cleared as a suspect. So he signed as an undrafted free agent for the Cowboys, played in 74 games, started 71 of those over multiple stints, played for other teams like the Bengals, and in 2023 was his last season. The combination of injuries and all in all appeared in 89 games with 86 starts overall over a 7-season span with the Cowboys and Bengals. A very promising start with the Cowboys, and it was a pretty big free agent move to Cincinnati, but devastating injuries, and he's had recent attempts at returning to an active roster as of today, and I would say overall he was a hit for sure. Moving on to number 4, we got Timmy Jernigan from Columbia High School in Lake City, Florida. He was listed at 6'3", 280 pounds coming out of high school. And Timmy Jernigan was an interior disruptor with rare athleticism. Like I said, the number 4 prospect, and had a pretty solid career all in all at Florida State. 11.5 sacks, 29 tackles for loss as an interior defensive lineman. And he was a key contributor for Florida State's 2013 national championship team with everybody's favorite Jameis Winston. And Timmy Jernigan was one of those prospects that he was an active pass rusher from the interior. He wasn't just a space eater. That production and flash of potential did help him get drafted by the Baltimore Ravens in 2014, where he had his best years, where he was drafted in the second round and he became a key part of the defensive line. Overall, played from 2014 to 2020. Injuries was essentially the barrier of his career, but he was a second round pick who carved out a real productive pro NFL career. I'd say he was a clean hit for a top 5 recruit. we're moving on to the number 5 recruit, and we're talking about D'Anthony Thomas from Crenshaw High School in LA, California. And I know you guys know who Black Mamba is. Nicknamed that from Snoop Dogg, growing up in Snoop Dogg's football league because of his elite, rare quickness and speed. Now, D'Anthony Thomas, honestly, was probably top 3 one of my favorite college players of all time. The number 5 recruit, listed at about 5'8", 5'9", 160 pounds out of high school. But what he lacked in size, he made up for in pretty much everything else. He was listed as an athlete coming out of high school. Dominant corner, dominant receiver, and running back. As you'd imagine, one of the fastest players in college football history. Signed with Oregon, which already shocked the world because he was right there, USC's backyard. Decided to go with Chip Kelly in Oregon, and honestly, it was probably the best decision. The trajectory of Oregon and USC at that time. Has some of the highest views on YouTube, high school and college, and came out the gate and made an impact, which was already a loaded Oregon offense. I remember the bowl game against Russell Wilson in Wisconsin. Touched the ball 3 times in the 2012 Rose Bowl. He scored 2 incredible touchdowns, a 91-yarder and a 64-yarder, and he helped Oregon win in one of the highest scoring Rose Bowl games ever, 45-38, in that shootout against Russell Wilson. Remember, he only touched the ball about 3 times that game and had 2 long touchdowns. It was super exciting. Became the man in 2012, 2013, a lot of Heisman hype. True junior year was a little bit riddled by injuries, but overall in his college career, 3,900 yards plus, including that great 2012 season where he had 1,480 all-purpose yards, 14 touchdowns. He was the perfect weapon for Oregon's spread tempo, super fast offense. Defensive coordinators had to account for him on every snap, including special teams. I remember against Kansas State, the opening kickoff, returning that to the house. He was just one of the funnest players to watch, especially if you were watching him live. Now, as I mentioned, his true junior year wasn't as dominant as we hoped for it to be, in combination with the rather underwhelming NFL Combine. And I remember watching that live. I'm not sure if the guy who does the 40-yard dashes messed him up. I remember he made him restart a few times, and I just remember that being a big controversy. But at his size, he didn't run the 40-yard dash that we were expecting, which we all thought he was running 4.2. He didn't quite run very fast, so he did slip to the 4th round, drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. His role was a hybrid running back receiver and definitely special teams, but he honestly didn't really make much of an impact. His elite college skill set didn't fully translate to Sundays. Honestly, Tyreek Hill's career is what we thought D'Anthony Thomas's career was going to be. He was a system legend, and that's not a knock. His skill just shows you that you got to bring more than just top end speed if you're going to survive in the NFL. Next, the 24/7's number 6 prospect was Aaron Lynch, a defensive end from Island Coast High School in Cape Coral, Florida. Originally signed his letter of intent for Notre Dame. He was a prototype edge rusher who did have star upside, and out the gate at Notre Dame he showed freshman flashes. In 2013 he eventually transferred to USF to come back home, and he had a great year. 13.5 sacks, 18 tackles for loss. He was, for USF, one of the most disruptive pass rushers in the country that season. His NFL career spanned from 2014 to 2020 as a defensive end, outside linebacker for the 49ers, Bears, and Jaguars. He was drafted in the 5th round by the San Francisco 49ers in 2014. All in all, his career spanned from 2014 to 2020. Had 12.5 sacks in his first 2 years, but after that saw a dramatic decline, culminating in a retirement. Tried a few brief comebacks, but his last NFL play was in 2020. Had 20 sacks for his career. I'd say he had a productive early NFL career. It ended abruptly. Talent was real, just circumstances changed the outcome for Aaron Lynch. But all in all, he made the NFL, and I'd say he was a hit. Next up, we got another athlete coming out of Florida, and that's Carlos Williams. Carlos Williams attended Ridge Community High School in Davenport, Florida, and he was another fun guy coming out of high school that it was just fun to watch. He was an elite athlete, and his position flexibility was definitely part of his appeal. He started at safety at Florida State, and where he eventually switched to running back, which you typically don't see that type of switch move. He was part of Florida State's 2013 run, just like Timmy Jernigan. His best year at Florida State was 2015, where he rushed for 470 yards and 11 touchdowns. Definitely more of that power back on limited carries. He was selected in the 5th round by the Buffalo Bills, and he made an immediate impact as a rookie. He recorded 500 plus rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, and averaged 5.5 yards a carry in 11 games. A fun fact, he actually scored a touchdown on his very first NFL carry. Now, his NFL career overall was short, and outside of his rookie year, didn't really do much more. Suspensions, substance abuse issues derailed whatever he had left in the NFL. Waived by the Bills in 2016. Had another shot with the Steelers, but was suspended again, so he never actually played for the Steelers. Made a little comeback in the CFL for the Toronto Argonauts. So things definitely unraveled after his rookie year. Big picture for Carlos Williams, he had a development curve which mattered more than his raw athleticism. Now, 24/7's number 8 prospect was Anthony Johnson out of Eau Perry Walker High School down south out there in New Orleans, Louisiana. Definitely a big country boy coming out of high school, 6'3", 294 pounds. He was the interior lineman with some of the most dominant high school tape I'd ever seen. I remember him coming out of high school. Crazy hype. But for whatever reason, it never became consistent at LSU. He was that prospect that you were kind of waiting and you wanted more. You questioned if he really loved the game. There was a lot of reports with conditioning issues every year coming into the college season, and also his motor and effort. Those questions persisted with Anthony Johnson a lot. He flat out just failed to meet the expectations for a top 10 recruit. Just flat out failed to meet it. He was undrafted in 2014, but he was able to sign with the Miami Dolphins and bounced around a little bit. The Dolphins, Colts, Jets, Chicago Bears. Primarily, at best, was a rotational defensive lineman. He played in 22 games overall in his career, recorded 1 sack in his career. Anthony Johnson just flat out was one of the clearer misses in the top 10 for this class. Moving on to the number 9 prospect, and this is one of the more popular players on the entire list in the entire class, and that's Sammy Watkins from St. Fort Myers High School out there in Fort Myers, Florida. At a high school, he was 6'1", 180 pounds. The hype with Sammy Watkins was real. He was a complete receiver. He had speed, strength, and one of the best yards after catch ratings that I personally ever saw, but that was also on his scouting report. One of the funnest college players to watch of all time out there in Clemson. Over his career, 240 catches, almost 3,400 receiving yards, 27 touchdowns in 3 years. Out the gate, was ready for college ball. He was ACC Freshman of the Year, but he literally was one of the most explosive players Clemson has ever had. Had some of the biggest hype as a receiver at that time, probably since Julio Jones. Was a top 5 pick, was drafted number 4 overall by the Buffalo Bills. And as a rookie, had a pretty productive rookie season. And as a rookie, it looked like he was living up to the hype. 65 catches, 128 targets, almost 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, including an 84-yard score, showing that explosiveness. Followed that up in his sophomore year with over 1,000 yards on only 60 catches. So he was getting about 18 yards a pop, 9 touchdowns. We thought Sammy Watkins was going to be that dude. Ultimately, he had a productive NFL career, but it was greatly slowed by injuries, which capped a lot of his athletic gifts, which ultimately capped his NFL season. His next highest catch total in his career wasn't until in 2019, where he had 52 catches for 673 yards. After that, pretty much faded away. His production continued declining until his last season in 2022, where he only played 3 games for the Ravens. So ultimately, you could say say he had an underwhelming career, but I feel that he absolutely lived up to his ranking and had a career that pretty much anybody would still live and die for. And last but not least, we got Stephon Anthony, a linebacker from Anson High School in Wadesboro, North Carolina. And the hype with Anthony, he was the modern linebacker with size and speed. At a high school, he was listed at 6'3", 220 pounds. His best season for Clemson was his senior year. He had 90 tackles, 3 sacks. He was the captain and leader for that Clemson defense. He was a late bloomer for sure, kind of a one-hit wonder in a sense, but because he showed that flash and that versatility, he was able to become a first-round pick for the New Orleans Saints in 2015. And there were questions because of his late peak, how good was his actual season? Well, hey, the New Orleans Saints still took a chance on him. He was a day one pick, and he started off strong in his NFL career. 2015 to 2017, had 112 tackles and actually a touchdown in his rookie year. Bounced around in the NFL ultimately. Great rookie year, very fast decline. Bounced around in the NFL after his first 3 seasons. So though he was a late bloomer, he was drafted for upside if you're taking a day one pick on Stephon Anthony, and it just didn't sustain. Ultimately, his last year in the NFL was 2019. Appeared in 62 games overall for his career with 152 tackles, an interception, and a sack. He still carved out an NFL career. Ultimately, I feel that he was a hit as a top 10 prospect for this class. He returned to Clemson as a defensive graduate assistant back in 2022, and he's working his way up the coaching ranks. All right, there you have it. These are the top 10 prospects according to 24/7 Sports. This was probably the most loaded class. Like I said, we could honestly go 50, 60, 70 deep, and there's going to be players that you knew either from their college careers or even their NFL careers as well. Like we saw in this list, pretty much everybody made it to the NFL and played more than one season. So a very strong class back in 2011. And of course, if you made it this far in the video, I deeply appreciate it. We're going to continue. Like I said, we're going for the rest of the decade. So be sure to subscribe and like the video, and we can take this trip down memory lane together. But all in all, appreciate y'all watching. I'm going to go ahead and get up out of here, and I'll see y'all in the next video.